He was intelligent, charismatic, and trusted by many, which made the truth even more terrifying. Today, we're exploring the life and crimes of Ted Bundy, one of the most notorious serial killers in American history. If you enjoy deep dives into true crime, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Let's begin. Theodore Robert Cowell was born on November 24, 1946, in Burlington, Vermont. He was born out of wedlock to a young woman named Eleanor Louise Cowell, and for years, Ted was raised believing his grandparents were his parents, and that his own mother was his sister. It was a secret that would shape him in ways nobody could have predicted. After his mother married Johnny Culpeper Bundy, the family relocated to Tacoma, Washington, and young Theodore took on his stepfather's surname, becoming Ted Bundy. On the surface, he appeared to be a normal, even exceptional young man. He was bright, well-spoken, socially capable, and highly ambitious. He attended the University of Washington, where he studied psychology and graduated in 1972. But he did not stop there. Bundy went on to enroll in law school at the University of Utah, where he studied law, a decision that would later prove significant. His legal knowledge gave him a deep understanding of the justice system, courtroom procedures, and how evidence works. And he would eventually use every bit of that knowledge to try and save his own life. He also worked at a suicide prevention hotline in Seattle, where he was described by colleagues as empathetic and caring. One of those colleagues was true crime author Ann Rule, who later wrote one of the most well-known books about him titled The Stranger Beside Me. She had no idea that the kind, attentive young man sitting beside her was already becoming a monster. By 1974, Ted Bundy had begun to kill. His victims followed a deeply disturbing pattern. Young white women, typically between the ages of 15 and 25, with long, dark brown hair parted in the middle, slender, pretty, and many of them college students full of life and potential. Criminologists and investigators have long noted the striking resemblance his victims bore to his former college girlfriend, a woman who had broken off their relationship, though Bundy himself never fully confirmed this connection. His method was calculated and cold. And then he would feign injury, wearing a fake cast on his arm or using a sling, to appear vulnerable and non-threatening. He would approach women in public places, ask for help carrying something to his car, and strike when they were close enough. He lured his victims into his tan Volkswagen Beetle, a car that would become one of the most infamous vehicles in true crime history. Bundy was not just a killer, he was a predator who studied human behavior, exploited trust, and used his charm as a weapon. He operated across at least 7 states: Washington, Oregon, Utah, Colorado, Idaho, Florida, and California, over a period of 4 years, leaving devastation in his wake. Some of his known victims include Linda Ann Healy in Seattle in 1974, Donna Gail Manson in Olympia in 1974, Corinne Campbell in Colorado in 1975, and his youngest known victim, 12-year-old Kimberly Leach in Florida in 1978. He would later confess to 30 murders, though many investigators believe the true number was significantly higher, some estimates reaching well over 100. What followed Bundy's final capture was one of the most sensational and widely televised trials in American legal history, and this is where his legal background came into full display. Bundy made the bold and shocking decision to represent himself in court. He dismissed his defense attorneys and took on the role of his own lawyer, cross-examining witnesses, making legal arguments, and addressing the jury directly. Many legal experts and observers believe this was a catastrophic decision. Others believed Bundy did it for control, because the courtroom was one of the few places left where he could command attention and feel powerful. And his arrogance was on full display. He seemed to enjoy the spectacle of it all. But no amount of legal knowledge could overcome the mountain of evidence stacked against him. He was convicted of the brutal Chi Omega sorority house murders and the murder of 12-year-old Kimberly Leach, and he was sentenced to death on both counts. In perhaps one of the most bizarre moments of the entire trial, Bundy married Carol Ann Boone right there in the courtroom. He exploited a Florida law at the time that recognized a verbal declaration of marriage made in open court as legally binding. Boone, who had been a loyal supporter and firmly believed in his innocence, accepted. They later had a daughter together, conceived during prison visits under circumstances that have never been fully explained. As his execution date drew closer, Bundy began to confess. He sat down with investigators and described his crimes in chilling detail, 30 murders across 7 states. Many who listened to those confessions believed he was using the information strategically, dangling details to buy himself more time. Investigators would schedule sessions, hoping each confession would lead to another delay. It prolonged things, but only for so long. Not everyone Ted Bundy targeted lost their life. Some survived, and their strength and courage would play a critical role in bringing him to justice. In November of 1974, 18-year-old Carol DeRonch was shopping at a mall in Murray, Utah, when a well-dressed man approached her claiming to be a police officer. He told her someone had attempted to break into her car and asked her to accompany him to file a report. She got into his vehicle, he handcuffed her. So he raised a crowbar. But Carol DeRonch fought back with everything she had, threw herself out of the moving vehicle, and escaped. She survived. Her eyewitness testimony and identification of Bundy was one of the most critical pieces of evidence used against him and directly contributed to his first conviction. Rhonda Stapley came forward decades later, revealing that Bundy had attacked her in Utah in 1974. She had kept her secret for over 40 years out of fear and trauma. She survived by going completely limp, convincing him she was dead, and escaping while he was distracted. In 2016, she finally told her story in her memoir titled, "I Survived Ted Bundy," giving a voice to an experience she had carried alone for most of her life. Then came the night of January 15th, 1978, one of the darkest nights in Tallahassee, Florida. A Bundy broke into the Chi Omega sorority house and attacked multiple young women as they slept. 2 of them, Lisa Levy and Margaret Bowman, did not survive. But Kathy Kleiner Rubin and Karen Sparks did, though both suffered injuries that would stay with them forever. Kathy's jaw was broken. Karen endured a fractured skull and sustained permanent neurological damage. They lived, but the trauma of that night never left them. One of the most haunting and heartbreaking moments to come out of the entire Bundy story involves a survivor who appeared in a documentary interview. She walked in wearing a cap, and when she removed it, she revealed that she had shaved off all of her long dark hair, the very feature that had made her a target in the first place. Having survived the unthinkable, how she had taken away the one thing a monster had chosen her for. It was a moment that said more than words ever could. Ted Bundy was not easy to catch, and even harder to keep behind bars. He was first arrested in Utah in 1975 and was later linked to multiple murders across several states. He was extradited to Colorado to face murder charges. But in 1977, Bundy escaped from a courthouse library in Aspen, Colorado, by jumping out of a second-floor window. He was recaptured 8 days later. But that was not the end of it. Just months later, in December of 1977, Bundy escaped again, this time from his jail cell in Glenwood Springs, Colorado. He had been losing weight deliberately, slowly over weeks. He used that to squeeze through a small opening he had cut in the ceiling of his cell and crawled through to freedom. By the time anyone noticed he was gone, he had a significant head start. He was free for 46 days. During that time, he made his way to Tallahassee, Florida, where he committed the Chi Omega sorority house attacks and the murder of Kimberly Leach. He was finally caught again on February 15, 1978, in Pensacola, Florida, after a traffic stop drew suspicion. It was over. He would never be free again. On the morning of January 24, 1989, Ted Bundy was executed in the electric chair at Florida State Prison in Stark, Florida. He was 42 years old. Outside the prison walls, crowds had gathered. Some stood in silence. Many celebrated, cheering, holding signs, setting off fireworks. For the families of his victims, It was the end of an extraordinarily long and painful chapter. For the rest of the world, or it was the closing of a case that had gripped and terrified an entire generation. In his final days, Bundy blamed pornography for his crimes, a claim that was widely dismissed by investigators, psychologists, and criminologists who had studied him closely. The consensus was clear. The darkness inside Ted Bundy was not something he stumbled into. It was something he built, nurtured, and chose every single time. He confessed to 30 murders. The real number may never be known. He stole futures. He shattered families. He left behind scars that decades have not erased. But the survivors, Carol, Rhonda, Kathy, Karen, and others whose names we may never know, they stand as a powerful reminder that even in the presence of pure evil, the human will to survive is extraordinary. Ted Bundy wanted to be remembered. He craved attention, fame, and infamy until his very last breath. So, let us be intentional about how we remember him, not as a charming enigma or a subject of fascination, but for exactly what he was: a predator, a killer, a man who wore a smile like a disguise and destroyed everything he touched. The real story of Ted Bundy does not belong to him. It belongs to his victims, and it always will. Thanks everyone for watching. See you again in the next episode, and don't forget to like and subscribe.